Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be my palette of the month update, and if you're new to my channel, basically every month I choose one eyeshadow palette to focus on. So in this video I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of my palette of the month for June, and then I'm also going to be talking about what palette I chose for the month of July. So let's just go ahead and get started. For my June palette of the month, I chose the Colourpop Yes Please palette, and this is just a really warm summery palette. And I have been using this throughout the month, but I didn't get much use out of this as I would have liked to. The first couple times I used it, I wasn't too impressed with it, and I don't know, I just kind of got sick of these warm tones. So I'm just going to go shade by shade and kind of explain how I use them. So the first shade we have here is called Full Zip. And this is basically just a skin tone shade, and I don't like these shades in palettes because I feel like I don't really use them and they don't serve any purpose for me. Some people like to set their eyeshadow primer down with them, but for me, I don't set my eyeshadow primer, so this shadow was kind of just useless to me, to be honest. And then the next one is called Big Cocktails, and I'm not going to be swatching these just because I don't want to get shadow everywhere, but I might swatch a few of them for you guys. So Big Cocktails is more of a orangey shade, and I did enjoy this shade. It's just your average warm tone shadow. And then we have the shade Champs, which I really liked using as a transition shade, so that one I probably got the most use out of. So I also kept track of my uses for each of them. So Full Zip I used once, and then Big Cocktails I used twice, and then Champs I used 4 times. And then the next shade we have here is called Bling, and it's just kind of a coppery tone metallic color. And I don't know, this was just kind of like an average all over the lid shade, and I wasn't, like, the quality of these shadows is good, but it's not anything that, like, blew my mind. So I do enjoy Colourpop shadows because they're so inexpensive and they're pretty good quality compared to other shadows. But the shade Bling I only used once, and then we have the shade Louie, which again I only used once, and this is just a little bit lighter, and I don't know, I just wasn't impressed with these shadows. And then the shade Buttercake, that was probably one of my favorite shades in the palette. I use this as an inner corner highlight a lot, and I use that shade 4 times. The next shade we have is Spoiled, and this is more of a red tone shade. I did use the shade Spoiled 3 times, so I kind of used it to deepen up my look a little bit and give a little bit more of that red tone. But I also felt like this shade Big Cocktails as well as G&O looked kind of similar, and even Spoiled looked similar because they're all those kind of warm tones in the same color family. But the shade G&O I also used 3 times, so I'm just going to swatch those 3 for you guys so you can see kind of how similar they really are. And they really don't look similar in the pan and even in these swatches, but when you put them on the eyes, especially this shade, this is Big Cocktails, and G&O, when you put them on the eyes, they look really similar. Not so much this middle shade called Spoiled, that's a little bit more red tone, but I just felt like these were all pretty similar. This palette obviously doesn't have much variety, like you're gonna get a warm tone look out of this no matter what you do with it. Then we have the shade Mischief, which is a yellow, and obviously this is like the most unique shade in the palette. But I did really enjoy using this. It was an average yellow. It wasn't extremely opaque or the best quality yellow, but I mean, it's a yellow shade, so they're pretty hard to make opaque. And then we have the shade Note to Self, which is a little bit of a cooler tone brown shade. And I did also really like this as a transition shade, and I think it went really well with the yellow shade. Also, Mischief I used twice, and then Note to Self I used 4 times. The next one we have is a little bit more of an orange tone. This is the shade Chauffeur, and it's an orangey coppery color. And I just use this all over the lid, and again, these 3 metallic shades also don't give you much variety. I feel like they're kind of similar, but it is a warm tone palette, so that's what you're gonna get out of it. And then the last one is the shade French Kiss, and this was really good for deepening out the outer corner, or I used it for like a shadow liner a lot. and I did use the shade 3 times. So let me just swatch the metallic shade for you guys so you can see how kind of similar these are, because I feel like especially the shade Bling and also the shade Louie are pretty similar. And these metallic shades are okay. They're not like the most metallic I've ever used, but that top shade right there is called Bling, and then the second one is Louie. So as you can see, those two are pretty similar. And this Chauffeur shade is a lot more orange than the other two. But with these two on the lid, you're gonna get a pretty similar look. So my final thoughts on this palette is it's definitely a monotone, like warm palette. So if you really love warm shadows and you tend to go for that a lot, I think you'd really like this palette. And you can also get a few other looks out of it, like using the yellow shade and this more cooler tone brown shade. But I feel like for me, it just, I don't know, just something about it I didn't like. I felt like every look I did with this kind of came out the same. So this definitely isn't my favorite palette, and I might actually end up decluttering this, but I'm gonna have a declutter video up, I think next week, so stay tuned for that. I will pop some looks up on the screen of the looks I did with this palette, but also at the end of every month I do a Shadow Saturday series look with my palette of the month. And if you're new to my channel, basically every Saturday I do an eyeshadow tutorial with a different palette. So that's kind of a series I do, and I kind of incorporate my palette of the month in with it. So you get to see how the palette performs, and you can also follow along with the tutorial if you have this palette in your collection. Now for the palette that I chose for the month of July, I'm really excited to use this. This is the Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe palette, and don't judge me on that pronunciation, but I think this is a really pretty palette for summer. And this is currently in my Shop My Stash, but I find with my Shop My Stash products, I don't get as much use out of them. I get like a few uses out of them rather than products that are in like my Project Pan products I use a lot. And I wanted to make this my palette of the month because I want to use this more consistently and get a lot more use out of this, because this has some really pretty, more brighter shades for summer. Like all these matte shades are really beautiful, and then you have a few pops of blue, and I haven't used this very much, and I really like the quality of these shadows, so I want to get a lot more use out of it. And again, I feel like you have those similar warm tone shades, but there's also a lot more variety in this palette, so you can get a lot of different looks out of this. So I'm really excited to start using this for the month of July. So that's it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it helped you in some way, either making your decision on if you want to buy this palette, or if you already have it in your collection, to pull it back out, maybe play with some of those warm tones. So if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, I post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so stay tuned for those, and make sure to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notified every time I post. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.